I never thought I'd be sharing this story, but after all these years, I still get a warm feeling of satisfaction thinking about it. My name is Jessica Miller, and 5 years ago, I was a 32-year-old firearms instructor at a mid-sized police department in rural Montana. I'd been shooting since I was 8 years old. My father had taught me on our family's ranch, where we'd practice with tin cans and later with proper targets. By the time I became an adult, I was good enough to compete regionally, winning several marksmanship competitions. When I joined the police department as a civilian employee, I was excited to share my knowledge. Most officers appreciated my expertise, but I was very aware I was entering a male-dominated space. I designed my courses thoughtfully, focusing on practical techniques for officers who might never have to fire their weapon in the field, but needed to be prepared. My life changed when Captain Richard Tanner joined our department. He was a decorated officer from Los Angeles who'd been brought in to establish our first SWAT team. Broad-shouldered with a military buzz cut, he carried himself with the confidence of someone who expected to be obeyed without question. During our first meeting, his eyes swept over me dismissively as the chief introduced us. "This is Jessica, our firearms instructor. She'll be helping your team with qualification courses." Captain Tanner's eyebrows shot up. "No offense, ma'am, but my men need specialized tactical training, not basic range instruction." He looked me up and down, taking in my average height and build. "We'll handle our own firearms training." The chief looked uncomfortable, but didn't contradict him. I felt my cheeks flush, but kept my expression neutral. "I'm certified in tactical shooting as well, Captain, but it's your call." He nodded, already turning away. "Exactly. It is my call." That night, I told my husband Mike about the encounter. He frowned, setting down his coffee. "That doesn't sound right, Jess. You're the department's instructor." "I know," I sighed. "But it's a new SWAT team. Maybe he wants to establish his authority." I tried to give Captain Tanner the benefit of the doubt, but over the next few weeks, I noticed the sideways glances and smirks whenever I was on the range with my regular classes, while his team practiced nearby. The whispers weren't quite quiet enough. "That's the lady who thinks she can teach SWAT. Wonder if she can even handle the recoil on our rifles." Still, I kept my head down and did my job. Until the first real conflict arose. A month after Captain Tanner arrived, the department scheduled the annual firearms qualification. As the certified instructor, I was responsible for conducting and signing off on every officer's qualification, including the newly formed SWAT team. When I posted the schedule, I immediately received an email from Captain Tanner. "Instructor Miller, my team will be qualifying separately under my supervision. I've arranged for a more appropriate course of fire at the county tactical range. I'll sign their qualification cards myself." I took a deep breath and walked to his office, knocking politely. "Come in," he called, barely glancing up from his computer when I entered. "Captain Tanner, about the qualification schedule." "I've handled it," he interrupted. "My team needs a more challenging course than standard officers." "I understand that," I replied carefully, "but department policy requires that all qualifications be conducted and certified by the firearms instructor." "That's me." His expression hardened. "Look, Ms. Miller, no disrespect, but my men need to be evaluated by someone who understands tactical operations. Someone who's been in firefights and high-risk entries." He leaned back in his chair. "I appreciate your enthusiasm, but this isn't like shooting paper targets at a civilian range." The dismissal stung, but I kept my voice level. "The policy exists for consistency and liability reasons, Captain. I'm certified to administer any qualification course you'd like to design, including tactical scenarios." "I'm afraid I have to insist," he said with finality. "Chief Anderson has already approved our separate qualification." I went straight to Chief Anderson's office, only to find he had indeed signed off on the exception. "Jessica, I know this isn't protocol, but Captain Tanner comes with impressive credentials. Let's give him some latitude as he builds this team. That evening, I vented to my friend and fellow officer, Lisa Rodriguez. It's not about the extra work, it's the principle. He's undermining my position. Lisa nodded sympathetically. It's classic territorial behavior. Men like Tanner see firearms as their domain. A woman instructor threatens their worldview. But I've been here for years. I've qualified every officer in this department. And your qualifications are higher than most of theirs, Lisa pointed out. But Tanner doesn't care about that. He sees you as a threat to his authority. The next day, I overheard 2 SWAT team members talking in the break room. Can you believe they had a woman teaching firearms before we got here? One said. The captain says she's never even been in a real gunfight. Just shoots paper targets. I cleared my throat as I entered, and they fell silent, awkwardly nodding before leaving. I stood there, coffee forgotten, anger burning in my chest. 2 months into Captain Tanner's tenure, the department scheduled a training day where different units would demonstrate their specialties. The SWAT team would showcase tactical entries, the K9 unit would perform tracking demonstrations, and I was asked to run a shooting demonstration for visitors from neighboring departments. The morning of the event, I arrived early to set up my demonstration. I had planned an engaging exhibition of various shooting techniques, including some precision shooting at longer distances than officers typically train at. As I was arranging my targets, Captain Tanner approached with 3 of his team members. Miller, we need the main range for our demonstration. You can use the small side range. I stood my ground. The schedule clearly assigns the main range to the firearms instruction demonstration. Your team is using the tactical village for entries. He smiled condescendingly. Plans change. We need to show off some long-distance shooting capabilities. The side range only goes to 25 yards. My demonstration includes precision shooting at 100 yards, I explained. That's why I requested the main range weeks ago. One of his men snickered. Precision shooting. With what? A .22? Captain Tanner didn't silence him. Instead, he looked amused. Look, this isn't a debate. The SWAT team needs to make a good impression today. Your basic marksmanship exhibition can work fine on the small range. Before I could respond, he walked away, his team already moving my equipment aside. I found Chief Anderson, but he was busy with visiting officials. Just make it work, Jessica. We need everyone to cooperate today. Relegated to the small range, I had to completely revise my demonstration. Lisa found me reorganizing my equipment. They took over your range, didn't they? She asked, helping me move target stands. Of course they did, I said bitterly. And the chief wouldn't intervene. It's getting worse, Lisa confided. Tanner's been suggesting to senior officers that the department doesn't need a full-time firearms instructor. That they could save money by having SWAT officers handle all firearms training. My stomach dropped. He's trying to eliminate my position. He hasn't said it directly, but that's the implication. During my abbreviated demonstration, I noticed Captain Tanner bringing several officials to the main range. As I finished up, I could hear the loud reports of their rifles and exaggerated cheers when they hit their targets. Later, I overheard Captain Tanner talking to the visiting sheriff. Excellent grouping at 300 yards. That kind of precision takes a special kind of training. Not something you get from civilian instructors. The message was clear. He wasn't just sidelining me. He was actively working to replace me. The true breaking point came 3 months later, when the department received a significant grant for advanced firearms training. As the certified instructor, I should have been consulted on how to allocate the funds. But I discovered that Captain Tanner had been put in charge of the entire project. I found out during a department meeting when Chief Anderson announced, Captain Tanner will be overseeing our new advanced firearms program, including equipment purchases and selecting officers for specialized training. When the meeting ended, I approached the chief. Sir, with all due respect, managing firearms training is literally my job description. Why wasn't I involved in this decision? Chief Anderson looked uncomfortable. Jessica, Captain Tanner has connections with federal tactical training programs. He can get our officers into courses that are usually closed to departments our size. I understand leveraging his connections, but completely bypassing your existing firearms program. It's not personal, he interrupted. It's about what's best for the department. But it felt extremely personal when, later that day, I received an email outlining the new training structure. My role had been reduced to basic firearms qualification for patrol officers. All advanced training, including precision shooting and tactical applications, would now fall under SWAT's purview. That night, I sat at our kitchen table, staring at my laptop as I updated my resume. "You're not seriously thinking of leaving?" Mike asked, sitting across from me. "What choice do I have?" Tanner has systematically stripped away my responsibilities. He's turned me into a joke. My voice cracked. Today, I walked into the break room and conversation stopped completely. They were talking about me again. "You can fight this, Jess. You've earned your place there." I shook my head. "How?" "The chief supports him. The other officers are either on Tanner's team or too intimidated to speak up. There has to be a way to show them what you can do," Mike insisted. That's when my phone chimed with a department-wide email. A regional tactical competition was being held next month, hosted by our department. Teams from across the state would compete in various events, including a long-distance precision shooting challenge. The email concluded, "Our department will be represented by members of our SWAT team, selected by Captain Tanner based on qualification scores. This is an excellent opportunity to showcase our tactical capabilities to other agencies." I stared at the email, a plan forming in my mind. "Mike," I said slowly, "I think I just found my way." The next morning, I requested a meeting with Chief Anderson and came prepared with a folder of documentation. "Chief, I'd like to discuss the upcoming tactical competition." I began, placing my certification records on his desk. "Specifically, I want to enter the precision shooting event." He looked surprised. "Jessica, that event is for tactical team members. There's nothing in the rules that restricts participation to SWAT members." I countered, showing him the competition guidelines I'd printed. "It's open to qualified law enforcement personnel, which includes civilian instructors." "Technically, yes, but additionally," I continued, "as you can see from these records, my qualification scores consistently exceed departmental standards. In fact, they're higher than anyone else's in this department." The chief reviewed my documentation, looking increasingly uncomfortable. "Even if that's true, Captain Tanner is selecting participants based on their performance in tactical environments, not just range scores." "Then let me compete for a spot," I proposed. "Run a selection course with the same standards for everyone. If I don't make the cut, I'll walk away without another word. But if I qualify, I should have the opportunity to represent our department." After some hesitation, the chief agreed, likely believing I wouldn't pass whatever test Tanner devised. When Captain Tanner heard about our meeting, he was furious, but couldn't openly refuse a fair competition without revealing his bias. Instead, he designed a qualification course that emphasized physical demands alongside shooting accuracy, clearly hoping to disqualify me on the fitness portions. The selection event was scheduled for the following week. I spent every off-duty moment preparing, running drills at the range after hours and working with Mike, who had military experience, on movement techniques. Lisa helped by discreetly informing me about the course design. He's included a wall climb and heavy gear carry before the shooting portions. He's banking on you being too exhausted to shoot accurately. On qualification day, 10 officers, all men, gathered at the tactical range along with me. Captain Tanner outlined the course with barely concealed satisfaction. A half-mile run in full gear, followed by a wall climb, driving a 180-pound dummy 50 yards, and then immediately engaging targets at varying distances. Any questions before we begin? Tanner asked, his eyes resting on me. No, sir, I replied calmly. Just ready to shoot. His smirk told me everything. He thought he'd already won. The qualification day arrived with clear skies and a slight breeze. Perfect shooting conditions. As we lined up for the physical portion, I could feel the skeptical eyes of the SWAT team on me. Captain Tanner stood with a stopwatch, not bothering to hide his smug expression. Shooters ready, begin. I paced myself on the run, staying in the middle of the pack. Years of hiking and hunting in Montana's mountains had given me more endurance than most realized. The wall climb was challenging, but I'd practiced similar obstacles with Mike. For the dummy drag, I used proper leverage techniques rather than brute strength, completing it without exhausting myself. When I reached the firing line, I was tired but controlled my breathing as I'd practiced thousands of times. The first string of fire was at 25 yards. Easy shots that I placed in tight groups. Then 50 yards, then 100. My focus narrowed to the fundamentals: stance, grip, sight picture, trigger control. When the scores were tallied, 6 candidates would advance to the final selection round the following week. Captain Tanner read the names with increasing discomfort. 5 of his SWAT officers. And me. I had scored 4th overall. The whispers started immediately. One officer openly complained, she only qualified because the shooting portions are weighted too heavily. Captain Tanner quickly added, the final selection will emphasize tactical decision-making under pressure. The real skills needed in critical incidents. Over the next week, I noticed a change in how some officers treated me. A few SWAT members who had previously ignored me now nodded in acknowledgement when we passed in hallways. Lisa reported that my performance had raised eyebrows. People are talking about your scores, she told me during lunch. Jackson from SWAT actually asked me how long you'd been shooting competitively. The final selection event would include a stress shoot designed to simulate combat conditions, followed by the actual discipline that would be used in the competition. Precision rifle fire targets from 300 to 500 yards. 2 days before the event, I was practicing at the department range when Officer Ryan Thompson, one of the SWAT members who had advanced to the finals, approached me. Millard, he said, looking uncomfortable. Got a minute? I nodded, curious about what he wanted. Look, I'm not supposed to tell you this, but Tanner's rigging the final event. He's assigning different rifles to each shooter, and he's giving you one with a misaligned scope. I was shocked, both by the information and that he was warning me. Why are you telling me this? He shrugged. Because it's wrong. My dad taught me to respect skill, no matter who has it. And you got skill. He paused. Bring your own rifle if you can. Department policy allows personally owned firearms if they're registered with Armory. That evening, I registered my personal competition rifle with the department Armory. It was a precision bolt action that I'd used in civilian competitions for years. Completely legal for the event, though I knew Tanner would be furious. The morning of the final selection, Captain Tanner announced, department rifles will be assigned for consistency. Actually, sir, I interjected politely, I've registered my personal rifle according to department policy. I handed him the approval form signed by the armorer. His face darkened, but with Chief Anderson observing, he couldn't object. Fine. Everyone else will use assigned rifles. As we prepared to shoot, I could sense his plan unraveling. The day of the final qualification arrived with unexpected spectators. Word had spread about the civilian instructor, who had outshot half the SWAT team, and officers from various divisions came to watch. Even journalists from the local paper showed up, having heard about the department's preparations for the regional competition. The chief pulled Captain Tanner aside, speaking in low tones that nevertheless carried to those nearby. This has become very public, Richard. Make sure everything is run by the book. Tanner's face was rigid as he addressed the 6 finalists. Today's course will determine who represents our department in the precision rifle competition. You'll engage targets at 300, 400, and 500 yards under stress conditions. The stress portion involved physical exertion immediately before shooting, push-ups, sprints, and an obstacle course designed to elevate heart rates and make precision shooting more difficult. Officer Thompson went first, performing admirably with a score of 37 out of 50 possible points. The next 3 SWAT officers scored between 33 and 39 points. The 5th shooter, Lieutenant Davis, Tanner's second-in-command, scored an impressive 42. Then it was my turn. As I stepped up to the line, Captain Tanner announced loudly, "Remember, this is about tactical application, not just hitting targets on a calm range." I nodded without responding, focusing on my breathing as I completed the physical portion. Then I took position behind my rifle, feeling its familiar weight and balance. The range officer called out, "First target, 300 yards." I found my natural point of aim, controlled my breathing, and squeezed the trigger during the respiratory pause. Hit, center mass. Second target, 300 yards. Another hit. As I progressed through the course, I entered that state of flow that experienced shooters know, where everything fades except the relationship between sight, target, and trigger. Each shot broke cleanly. When I reached the final target, a small steel plate at 500 yards, a hush fell over the observers. This was a genuinely difficult shot, requiring compensation for distance, wind, and even the Earth's rotation at that range. I took extra time, reading the wind flags, making minute adjustments to my scope. I exhaled halfway, held, and pressed the trigger. The distinctive ring of lead on steel echoed across the range after a brief delay. A perfect hit. The range officer tallied my score, 47 out of 50. A near-perfect run that beat everyone else by a significant margin. For a moment, complete silence fell over the range. Then, surprisingly, Officer Thompson began to clap, followed by others, until most of the spectators were applauding. Captain Tanner stood frozen, his face a mask of disbelief and anger. Chief Anderson approached me with an extended hand. "Congratulations, Instructor Miller. You'll be representing our department at the competition." Tanner interjected, "Chief, with all due respect, we should consider overall tactical capabilities, not just one shooting event." The chief turned to him, speaking clearly enough for many to hear. "The purpose of a competition is to send our best. Instructor Miller has proven she's our best precision shooter." He glanced at the gathering crowd, including the newspaper reporters. "Unless you're suggesting we ignore measurable results." Backed into a corner, Tanner could only respond, "No, sir." As I walked off the range, Lisa hugged me, whispering, "You did it. You actually did it." Looking back at Captain Tanner's thunderous expression, I replied, "No, I just got started." The regional tactical competition took place 3 weeks later. Teams from 12 law enforcement agencies across 3 states participated in events ranging from tactical entries to hostage rescue scenarios. The precision shooting competition was scheduled for the final day. Throughout the competition, I maintained a professional demeanor despite the continued tension. Captain Tanner had been forced to include me, but still tried to minimize my role, introducing me to other teams as our administrative firearms instructor, rather than as the department's precision shooter. When the precision shooting event began, the format was challenging. Unknown distance targets appearing for limited times, requiring shooters to quickly estimate range, adjust for conditions, and make accurate shots under time pressure. As one of the few women in the competition, I drew attention. I overheard comments from competitors from other departments. "That's their admin staff. Tanner must have been ordered to bring her." But once the shooting started, the whispers faded. I engaged each target methodically, my years of competitive shooting paying off in consistency and accuracy. After the first round, I was in second place, just 2 points behind a state police sniper with military experience. Captain Tanner watched with a stony expression as the final round began. The most difficult stage with targets from 400 to 600 yards that had to be engaged while moving between multiple firing positions. The state police sniper went first, hitting 8 of 10 targets. An excellent performance that drew appreciative nods from the crowd. 3 more shooters followed with respectable but lower scores. Then it was my turn. As I stepped up to the starting position, I noticed Chief Anderson had arrived with several city officials. The pressure was immense, but pressure was familiar territory for any competitive shooter. The command came, "Shooter ready, stand by, begin." I moved through the course efficiently, finding stable positions, making wind calls, and breaking clean shots. When I reached the final position, a simulated rooftop requiring shooters to fire from an awkward prone position, I had hit 8 of 9 targets. The final target was at 600 yards, partially obscured, with a gusty crosswind that had caused most competitors to miss. I took my time, settling into position, studying the wind indicators. I made my calculations, added a slight adjustment for instinct, and pressed the trigger. The range officer's voice came through the speakers. Hit, center mass. With a perfect final stage, I had won the competition by a clear margin. The award ceremony was almost surreal as I stood on the top platform, accepting the trophy while photographers captured the moment. Chief Anderson was beaming, city officials were shaking my hand, and even competitors from other departments were offering congratulations. Captain Tanner's reaction was the most satisfying. He approached stiffly, extending his hand. "Congratulations, Miller. That was impressive shooting." It wasn't a full apology, but it was acknowledgement. I accepted his handshake with a professional nod. The following week, Chief Anderson called me into his office. "Jessica, your performance has attracted attention. The State Police Tactical Unit has asked if you would develop a precision marksmanship program for their instructors." "I'm honored," I replied, "but my position here is being expanded," he interrupted. "I'm promoting you to Department Training Coordinator. You'll oversee all firearms instruction, including advanced tactical training." He smiled slightly. "Captain Tanner will report to you regarding SWAT firearms qualification." The irony wasn't lost on either of us. Over the following months, the department culture shifted. The SWAT team, seeing my capabilities firsthand, began to actively seek my input. Officer Thompson and 2 others requested private instruction to improve their long-distance shooting. Even some of Tanner's most loyal supporters couldn't argue with results. Captain Tanner remained for another year before accepting a position with another department. Before he left, he stopped by my office. A courtesy I wouldn't have expected months earlier. "I underestimated you," he said simply. "That was my mistake." I nodded, neither accepting nor rejecting what wasn't quite an apology. Everyone underestimates someone sometime. The question is whether they learn from it. 3 years later, our department hosted the regional competition again. This time, I watched from the sidelines as 2 of my students, 1 male, 1 female, took first and third place in precision shooting. When a reporter asked how our small department had developed such exceptional shooters, I glanced at the trophy from my own competition, still displayed in the department's lobby. "We learn not to judge capability by appearance," I said. "Turns out, that makes everyone better." That simple lesson, earned the hard way, had transformed our department. And sometimes, when I'm on the range teaching a new class of recruits, I share this story as a reminder. Skill doesn't care about gender, title, or expectations. It only cares about performance when it matters most. If you enjoyed this story, don't forget to hit the subscribe button and become a part of our Everyday Life Stories community, where we celebrate quiet strength, real struggles, and unexpected victories. Where are you watching from? Drop a comment below. We love hearing from our amazing viewers around the world.